their lives from a lack in terms of financial to growing simultaneously and generating wealth for themselves, or growing up the ladder and making a lot of money. But what if the narrative is different? What if you start off with a lot of money and then end up losing it, either through a job loss or wrong business decisions? So how do you transition from that? And also in light of the COVID pandemic, in the last 6 months, we've seen so many people lose their jobs. And, many people are wondering now, how do I transition from here? How is my life going to look like? We all feel trapped. If you've not lost your job, you're fearing that you may lose it, and you may feel like you don't have hope and you don't know how to transition your life, because we are all used to the 8 to 5, narrative. And with us today is our guest, Daisy, who has gone through all this, and she's going to break it down and let us know how we can, transition ourselves from a place of having and losing, or losing and having. Welcome to the show, Daisy.
Thank you so much, Maria, for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to this conversation.
Right.
Yes.
So can you tell us about yourself?
All right. As just you've said, my name is Daisy Nyaga. I'm a mother of 2 girls, 14 and 9. I am also the head of operations at microfinance by the name of Bridges Credit Africa Limited. I also serve in Rotary, where we make our communities better. We take action to improve our communities. And as such, I am the club president of the Rotary Club of Nairobi South for the year 2020-2021. I love reading. I enjoy life, basically. Yeah. In a nutshell, that is me. Yes.
With all those accolades, it would be so hard to believe that at some point you basically didn't know where your life was heading. You were working at KQ.
Yes.
And you lost your job.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Okay. Wow. That's a very, how would I put it? That was a very bad, harrowing experience. But for the viewer that's listening, I want to tell them that you can actually go through a tough experience, but still rise up from it. So back in the year 2012, I lost my job from Kenya Airways through a very sudden retrenchment. And having worked for 7 years, I was actually looking forward to doing so much more with my life. I had my life really planned out, I will do this, XYZ, I will build, I will buy a car, I will travel with the kids once they're a bit older, but that was never to be. So on this particular day, I came from a flight, and that was a flight from Amsterdam. And having arrived in Nairobi at around 6 a.m., the early morning landings, I switched on my phone. Of course, I was eager to catch up with my family, call them up, let them know I have arrived safely. But one of the many messages that hit my phone was a message from the company. And it said that there was a very urgent meeting later that day. And of course, I was very curious. What would be so urgent that needed to be attended to on the very same day that you've arrived from an 8-hour flight? So to cut the long story short, came the afternoon, I drove back to the airport, and there I was. I was called for a letter, and it was a whole group. We were about 400 plus. And the letter said that we are sorry, dear so-and-so, but the company is retrenching. It's scaling down the operations, and unfortunately, you're one of the affected.
Right.
And that was very difficult. Yes.
So take us through the place where you've lost your job. So what next? What did you do?
Great. So after getting the letter, I was very tired because that's the same day I had arrived. So I went home, but I was in shock. I was mad. I was angry because I'm like, how can this happen? Nobody prepared me in good time of that sudden occurrence.
Right.
But 2-3 days later, that's when reality really hit me, that I would not really be putting on my uniform to go to the airport, that I would not be expecting any paycheck come the end of the month. So first things first, what transpired is that the workers' union, we went to court to challenge the retrenchment. So that meant that our dues were actually held up because of the court case. So we could not, or rather I could not access my retrenchment dues immediately. All right. But the bills keep coming. I still need to pay my rent, school fees, I need to eat, you know. So what I did is I got into network marketing. I had already registered with a networking company called Neolife, but as a consumer, because remember when you're flying, there's so much jet lag. Yeah, so I normally used to rely a lot on the supplements just to be able to ensure that my body is able to, you know, manage the different time zones.
Right.
So the moment I lost my job, I then changed from being just a consumer of the supplements to trying to sell them for a living.
Is this like this thing GNLD?
Yes,
Is it the
yes.
same
It's
concept?
not like this thing. It's
Yeah.
actually that particular company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, GNLD is actually called Neolife. It's Golden Neolife Diamite.
Right.
So we call it Neolife. So here I was.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Is it because people always say that it's a hoax?
No. Let me demystify. It's unfortunate when you don't understand a thing.
Right.
You will say anything you want to say about it. But this is a company that has been in existence for the last 60 years. And it's headquartered in the US, and they make very healthy nutritional supplements all over the world.
Okay.
And it's a business like any other. You have a product, which is supplements. You have consumers, which is you and me, and you make your money in the transaction. But the reason maybe people will say it's a hoax is because people don't want to put in the work that's required.
Okay.
Just like going to a kinyozi, opening up, waiting for a customer, you know, serving that customer, and the customer pays you. So people are not willing to put in the effort. But let me tell you, for the next 2 years, I lived off my small profits and commissions.
So you used to be a salesperson for Neolife.
Yes. So now I changed from being a consumer.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of consumer who will come from a flight. I buy my 20,000 worth of supplements for me and my children, to now struggling to get a pack of 5 to sell. So I hope you see that transition. Before I would very easily go and buy a whole box.
Was that able to sustain your lifestyle?
It wasn't able to put me back into a comfortable position, but I lived day to day on those small profits.
Because I can imagine as a flight attendant, you
Yes.
were earning X amount of money, which was, you said you
Yes.
were comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah? And then all that has been taken away from you. So did you have to adjust something? Or did that, the job that you got, the Neolife job, was it able to, cover the same cost as being a flight attendant? Or did you have to adjust something?
No, it wasn't able, the money I was making every day wasn't able to match my income as a flight attendant. I mean, it was not even near a quarter of what I was earning as a flight attendant. But it was able to meet my daily food, So I had to adjust a lot of things, because priority now was, what do I eat? What do we eat with the kids? How do I commute to town? That was the priority. So that led to a lot of adjustments, which were painful, and they were gradual. So it's not like I lost a job today and I shifted my lifestyle the following day. It was a couple of months down the line. Remember, the court case is ongoing.
Right.
So 3 months into the court case, no money is forthcoming. All right? But you need to make decisions. So about 5-6 months after retrenchment, I couldn't keep up with the rent of the apartment I was living in. So that made me move to a much cheaper house. I don't know that to call it apartment, but a much cheaper house. And I think that I was paying about half the cost of what I was previously paying.
So can you give us, were you moving from Westlands to...
Oh no, okay.
Can you give us a comparison?
Yes. Now, amazingly, the apartments were not far from each other. I was living at Mirema. The Mirema is in Westlands. And those years, in 2012, Mirema was like upper side of, what do you call it?
Is it in Thika Road?
Yes, it's on
Mirema.
Thika Road, just after Roysambu.
Right.
Along Kamiti Road. So
Yeah.
Mirema was like a prime estate of those sites. I was living in Mirema that time.
Right.
And the apartment that I got wasn't too far off from where I used to live, but it was a totally different class and place. So this house, it's one of those, you see, like the joint houses, which had been built in Zimmerman way before, like you're only separated by your neighbor, just by a wall. And the house was so tiny, half of my belongings were outside the house. Part of my sofa, part of my books, my bookshelf, so much of my belongings were actually outside the house. The beauty was the house was in its own compound. Yeah, it was a colonial house in its own compound. But I remember the bathroom was in the sitting room. I mean, it was just like a weird house. Like the bathroom is right next to the kitchen, and then there's very tiny sitting room. So it was a very drastic change for me. And
How was that emotionally for you? I mean, you had friends. Was there like backlash? Did you feel insecure even meeting people, associating with people? Because having been from one class to another, you must have really, done a number on you. Did it?
Yes, it did. But it was the advantage happened because almost about 80% of my networks, of my friends, were actually also in aviation. And most of them had actually also been retrenched. So they're also dealing with their own issues. So the people I would call as my friends now outside of aviation were very few, more of family. All right? But they supported me through phone calls. I mean, there's no way I was going to let a friend visit me in that house. There is just no way.
So you didn't feel like you were castigated?
Not at all.
They didn't let you feel that? Because sometimes when someone is living a certain kind of a lifestyle and then, God forbid that something goes or happens and goes wrong, then most people actually run away from you because they don't want to be, the person that bails you out in case, you need, because at that time you obviously would need a lot of help.
The thing is, very few, in fact nobody other than my brother got to know I had moved houses. And they never got to know. So if we had to meet, we'd meet in town, So I kept that to myself. What was important for me is nitoke tao. See, I'm going to sell supplements. So whoever I needed to meet would meet in town. Of course, it would show on you that your lifestyle is just downgrading. I no longer have the car. I mean, I'm taking matatus. Occasionally you'll borrow a few shillings here and there, either for transport or for food. So that would show on you. But they never got to the point of actually coming home, and they never got to know. Only my brother, and he also never visited. I just told him on call, hey bro, by the way, nimehama. So should you think of visiting, don't go to that other house. I'm in a different place.
All right. Yeah. So now moving on to Neo Life. How long did you work there? Are you still working there?
Okay, Neo Life, I am very proud to say I'm a life member because Neo Life made two very important, how do I put it? It gave me two very good experiences in my life. Number one, when I was flying, remember I normally relied on the supplements. And my daughter was actually asthmatic when I was still flying, the firstborn. But she relied on a lot of omega-3s from the company, and her asthma died down within about 8 months of starting to use the supplements. So that alone hooked me onto the products. Number two, because of Neo Life, I kept my sanity. I had something to go and do as I waited for the court case to be concluded. So yes, I am a life member. I consume the products. I don't sell actively now, but I still have my network of friends and previous customers who still ask me for the supplements. So if anyone honestly would ask me, I'll gladly supply them. Yes.
So was the court case ever resolved?
From where I sit, I hear it's not yet fully resolved. Okay, from where I sit. There was a lot of appeals, but what I did for my own sanity and to be able to move on with life in 2014, I opted out of the case. You know, I just sat down and told myself, this is 2 years after retrenchment. The case is ongoing. The court had actually said we go back to work, but the employer appealed and there was a lot of back and forth. So I sat down and told myself, I will never move on if I keep my hope on that court case.
So you decided to opt out.
So I opted out. And that's how I ended up. I went to the company and cleared, and I got my dues. Yes.
Daisy, we'll take a break, and when we come back, you'll tell us more about this.
All right,
story.
thank you.
Welcome back to Confessions. If you're just joining us, we're talking about finding hope in the midst of so much turmoil happening around job losses. So, Daisy, you were telling us that so you opted out and decided to get your package and, you know, just start your life afresh.
Yes.
Yeah. Did the people that you went to pursue this court case with, did they see you as a betrayer?
No, they didn't. And because by that time, as much as we're in a joint case, remember, everybody's living their own life. People are dealing with their own stresses in their own homes. Yeah. So when you opt out, you're actually doing it as an individual. It's a very personal decision, and it doesn't affect them in any way. It's a question of who is willing to hold out to the very end, or how pressed you are to access your dues. So for me, I did what I felt was right, because by that time I had run out of the little monies. I was training heavily. I had already sold off my car. I had already cashed out or surrendered one of the education policies for my daughter, because this is 2 years after retrenchment. And you know, their fees was piling up. So I'd already surrendered one of the education policies. And so I didn't see any other place I would get like a lump sum money to keep moving on. Okay. So I just did it. I didn't have the strength to talk to people. I didn't have the strength to even think about that business. But I thank God, because I used that time to write my book.
It's called Beyond 8 to 5.
Exactly.
Critical Lessons by a Retrenchee.
Yes.
Such a cute book.
Asante
Very small
sana.
for those people who don't like reading. This is it's a few pages. It's like how many pages?
50.
Yeah, it's actually 50 pages. Yeah, 50 pages. So you can browse through it and get to know what she went through and how she was able to maneuver.
Yes. So it's an easy read. So because I didn't have the strength really to, you know, to talk about my business loss, talk about so many other things. So I just poured myself into writing the book.
Right.
And what inspired me, I kept asking myself, how many people are in their jobs and they're in a comfort zone? If they were to lose their job as I did, or lose their businesses, what would they do? So I decided to share my experience and the lessons that I've learned through that experience, so that somebody else doesn't have to go through it, you know, to make people better prepared for any eventuality in life. Because remember, life changes is not just from job loss or business loss. It can be a health crisis. You know, your life can just be disrupted by a health crisis. And so that is what inspired that book. So now, 2017, I poured myself out. And amazingly, I worked just right here next to Nyamamama at a company that's called Advanta Africa.
But what kept you going? I mean, you had everything. You know, you could have just chosen to give up, but you didn't. You struggled. You pushed yourself. You know, you were so positive around this whole experience. And I'm sure when you were going through it, it must have been very difficult.
Yes.
But what gave you the motivation to keep on going?
Great. A couple of factors. Number one, we start with the God factor. When I lost my job and I started now doing the new life business, I realized that going to town in the morning is very cheap, you know. So I'm really cutting my expenses.
Right.
So I'd find myself in town so early because I want to pay a cheap fare, 30 bob or 40 bob. And when you get to town, what do? I mean, before everybody else comes. So I discovered their morning glory services. All right. So during that time of hardship, I sought God and I found him. All right. So now that God factor kept me going, because if once you start growing and nourishing yourself spiritually, then God gives you some form of hope. You know, the promises you're told, believe the promises of God. He has good plans for you. He will restore everything. So the God factor was very key. So even on days I never sold a thing, I'll just remember some teachings.
Right.
You know that, you know what? God still has a good plan. So that kept me going. Number 2 was positive mentor development. Anybody that has done network marketing will tell you that you're normally taken through some very rigorous training on personal development, on mindset, you know, learning to tackle no's, you know. So that really helped me, because New Life really had a lot of trainings, almost twice a week, on how do you develop positive mental attitude. So that really also kept me going. And number 3, I think it's the kids. I mean, you have kids that have been used to a very good life, and now there's this dip, but you're so determined to bring them back to a place where they have a comfortable life, you know. So I think those are the 3 main factors: the God factor, having a positive mental attitude, and also wanting the best for you and for the kids.
Right.
So you just can't give up, because giving up means you're deciding to just
you're not just disappointing yourself, God, you're also disappointing your own kids.
Exactly. And also people that believe in you. So you find that there are 2-3 people who are really encouraging you, like a mentor, like, Daisy, don't worry, you can actually override this, you can go through this. So like you're saying, you don't want to disappoint them, so you just drag yourself along.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's this book about?
This is my baby.
Can people access? This is a book. This is a labor of love.
Yes.
This is a book that she was writing.
Yes.
At 7 a.m, as she was in the office waiting for people to come in.
Yes.
So just tell us a little bit about it, and tell us how people can actually get to buy it or access it.
Okay. Oh, great. Sometimes I look at this book, I get a bit emotional because when I wrote this book, honestly, I never thought it would touch people the way that it has.
Yeah.
So I love talking about it. It's titled Beyond 8 to 5, Critical Lessons by Retrenchee. So in it, I have shared 5 lessons that I believe every employee and also every individual should learn and take to heart. Because from my experience, those are the lessons I take away. Number 1, if you allow me.
Yeah, please. Very, you can quickly go through them.
I'll just mention the chapter titles, you know, just to give a snippet to the reader. Number 1, it sounds a bit rude, but I tell people, your employer is not your mommy or your daddy. That's chapter number 1. Because people need to come to that reality that yes, I am working for my employer and I am working to achieve the dream of this company. But should the company need to make a decision, either close down for whatever reason, you're not part of that. You have your own life that you need to figure out. So that's the first reality that I normally share with people. The second one is I challenge people. What talents I knew? What skills I knew that you're just letting sit idle? So I have a whole workbook, a whole checklist in the book, and I provoke people to think, what more can you do with your talent, with your interests, with your hobbies? You know, things that probably as a kid, you were the person in that thing. So what happened when you grew up? You know, so I challenge people to look through their talents and to explore them.
Right.
And to make money or develop a business or anything out of it. Number 3, it's maximizing opportunities, either in your workplace or in your business. Because if you run a small business, really, it's like you're self-employed. So you're also employed by your business, you know? So I challenge people to look through the opportunities. MARYA, you're here, you're with TV47. What other opportunities can you maximize for yourself besides just hosting me?
Right.
You know, you interact with so many people, guests, and you know. So how do you maximize all opportunities? Again, I have a whole checklist sort of to help people to think through how do they maximize the trainings that they're offered for free. Free transport, you're given, I don't know, free communication airtime. There's so much freebies that you enjoy at work, but you take them for granted, you know. So I challenge people to do that. Number 4, I challenge people to adjust to change. I want people to be aware that change can happen at any one time, and it's got nothing to do with you. It's never personal.
In fact, they say that one of the constant themes is actually change.
It's actually change. I mean, look at COVID. One morning, I mean, life was going on normal. You're dropping your kids in school, picking them up. The next minute, schools are closed. That is change. So how do you adjust and accept change? So I challenge people through the book to accept any form of change in their lives, whether it's in their workplace, their business, their finances, their relationships, whatever. And finally, I challenge people to have the faith to start all over. You know, you may not start from square zero, but every day is like a new start. So I always challenge people, and I've quoted, I don't want to say the whole Bible, but I'm giving them real examples of people that took the courage to start all over and they made it through. Right. So those are my 5 key lessons. And it always amazes me every day I wake up and have these messages from readers that, wow, thank you, Daisy. Because of this book, I've been able to do X, Y, Z. It really humbles me. Because when I went through my experience, I never thought that the book would actually
be born out of your own experience.
Born out of my experience and impact people as it is.
All right.
So where they can buy it, I have a book website. So it's www.beyond8to5.co.ke. 8 and 5 are digits, you know. So beyond8to5.co.ke. Facebook, look for me, Beyond 8 to 5. IG, Beyond 8 to 5 p.m. Twitter, Beyond 8 to 5.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for coming and giving us insight. You know, many people are actually going through this, and this has come at a timely, it's timely. You know, many people have lost jobs during this COVID pandemic, and I believe when they listen to your story, I hope that they will grasp something and find hope in it.
Yes, that's my prayer too. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Yes, the pleasure is mine.
Probably have you again another time.
I look forward to. I'm always available.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much for tuning into Confessions. Let's meet again next Saturday for more interesting and more in-depth conversations. You can reach us on our social media platforms. And if you have any interesting story that you want to share with us, please feel free to reach us through our social media platforms. Goodbye and God bless.
About making bold moves at such a young age.
We have very many people who are making products, but they're not able to find market for their products.
This week on The Grind, we feature Alex Mativo, who is the founder and CEO Ethnic Brand.
I'm always looking out for